Khadija Bajaber est une écrivaine kenyane d'origine Hamdrani. Hamdrani, c'est une région de l'est du Yémen actuel. Et ses ancêtres se sont installés à Mombasa, au bord de l'océan Indien, au Kenya. C'est une des deuxièmes plus grandes villes du Kenya. Et ils sont là depuis de nombreuses années. Elle me disait que c'est son arrière, your great-grandfather, who came here. Khadija a grandi dans cette ville. Elle y habite actuellement. Elle a fait des études de journalisme, mais elle a toujours été attirée par l'écriture, par le cinéma également. Elle a même un temps rêvé de devenir éditrice. Et puis un jour, elle entend parler de la création d'un tout nouveau prix littéraire aux États-Unis par la maison Graywolf Press pour un premier manuscrit d'un auteur africain anglophone résidant en Afrique. Et elle se lance. Et elle écrit son premier manuscrit, son premier roman, qu'elle présente au concours, qu'elle remporte. Et en fait, ce qu'elle a écrit, c'est le manuscrit de ce qui deviendra The House of Rust, la maison de rouille, qui remporte donc ce premier prix Graywolf Press Africa Prize en 2022. Donc c'était le tout premier, il continue chaque année, il y a eu 2 nouveaux lauréats depuis. Et ce prix inclut la publication de son manuscrit aux États-Unis. C'est extraordinaire, évidemment, pour commencer une carrière d'écrivain, d'être publié aux États-Unis. Khadija a également reçu un autre prix pour son premier roman, le prix américain Ursula K. le Guin Prize for Fiction. Son premier livre a été accueilli par la critique avec enthousiasme. Il a été qualifié d'étonnant, de glorieux, infusé par l'esprit de la mer, ce qui se passe en partie au bord de la mer. Son roman est également le premier ouvrage en anglais décrivant la culture hadrami, profondément enracinée dans les régions côtières de l'Afrique de l'Est. Khadija est également publiée dans différentes revues littéraires, parmi lesquelles Enkare Review, A Longhouse, Lolwe et Down River Road. La résidence de Khadija Bajaber au Château de Lavigny, qui durera pour elle 3 mois, est soutenue par la Fondation suisse pour la culture Pro Helvetia et son antenne à Johannesburg. Voilà Khadija.
Thank you, Sophie, for the introduction, and Pro Helvetia and Château de Lavigny for allowing me to be part of this residency. So I am going to read an excerpt from a short story I've been working on for the past 8 months. It is about a child who lives in a house with her mother, and they have moved to a new house after a horrible fire happened in their old house. This story works with the imagery and the symbolism, or like the main focal thing that grabbed my imagination was the African grey parrot, which we call Kasuku. And what I realized growing up is that Kasuku is a very common pet in Swahili households, and that Kasuku never has a name. Kasuku is always called Kasuku, and Kasuku is always told to say Kasuku, Kasuku, Kasuku. So I was always interested in that kind of animal. So it's just a small excerpt from that bigger short story. And this is between the maid who's doing Jamila's hair, Auntie Sarah and Jamila. Jamila means beautiful. And alright, let me just start reading. Auntie Sarah pulls on my hair, oiling and slipping and tugging and tightening until I feel the brightness of the fences pulling back my scalp, like she needs to tear my face off. My mother used to do my hair. She used to call me to her knee and thread ribbons through my braids as though she was sewing garlands in heaven, as though I were a beautiful bird in paradise, floating with my head full of roses. Every morning, before school, Mama would make me beautiful and beloved. We would sit in the entry parlor when it rained, and not even all the storm in the world would be gloom. When the bright sha-sha-sha of the rain struck down like the tassels on a bride's dress. But now it is Auntie Sarah who drags at my hair like some sailor hauling the rigging of a ship in a storm, halving my scalp with the might of God making a seam down the Red Sea. My eyes smart, present and future ills swarming me like maggots, as the old maid Mama came with to her marriage with the parrot takes my hair like an elephant sugarcane. Kasuku's cage is no longer in the parlor, but in Mama's rooms. Baba doesn't complain about it. He rarely sleeps there, even though he's meant to divide his days fairly between Mama's house and the other woman's. Mama never complains about her or about anything. Baba never complains at all now. His good-naturedness is so pronounced it makes Auntie Sarah want to kill him. The more Auntie Sarah hates, the less she talks. Dislike will have her summoning for hours, but hatred sinks her words inwards, heavy and untouchable. Auntie Sarah used to smile at me, but now, perhaps, I am more work, because Mama will not touch me. No, that's not true. It's not because I'm more work, it's because Auntie Sarah loves Mama, and Mama doesn't love me anymore. Auntie Sarah doesn't lecture me anymore because Mama doesn't love me, because Auntie Sarah thinks I've let Mama down the way Baba did. But Auntie Sarah still polishes Baba's shoes every day, and she smiles whenever she calls him boss. And Mama still hugs Baba in the shadow of the entryway, and he still sleeps in her bed. Stahamili, Auntie Sarah commands, the warm cut of my tears down my face intolerable. Vumilia. She pulls my hair back so hard my head is drawn back, and I look up at her as I know I ought not to, wasting the drag she's trying to make. Auntie, my words crack like a child's. What have I done? You don't call me Mila Mila anymore, I accuse tremulously. Wronged. That is not your name. It is my name. I know your name, you fiendish thing. Auntie Sarah says firmly. The words are like venom, but her delivery is almost soft, as though it made her feel nothing to wound me, and thus it could never be a cruelty, only every deserved thing. People have such strange ways of speaking. People used to coo at me or wag their fingers at me in gentle reproach, chatter to me with comforting noise, and now no one will speak to me. And when they do, their tones and their words are dizzying and strange and hard to reproduce. No one could resist speaking to me before. They'd fret over me, their eyes alighting on me with interest. They wanted to hear me echo back to them what they wanted. They wanted all my tricks. She must finally see my tears, for they give her pause. I should not have said that. I won't tell Baba, I say flatly, like how she said about my name. But I am a child. I was with you all these years. Now you and Mama hate me as though I were a stranger. She considers me, the back of my head against the warm soil of her stomach where she stands behind me, marshalling my scalp. You are too old to be a child now. I am not too old. You are too old, she reiterates, laying it all out. And my body, caught in the lie, grew sick. It was Auntie Sarah who tended to me. I heard her telling Mama that I needed to see a doctor, that I needed medicine. But she said it the way she'd come to Mama's room to remind her that we only had one more packet of milk left for chai. I pressed my fevered ear to the door and saw in my mind's eye Mama at her desk like a doll, between Auntie Sarah and Kasuku's clothed cage, listening without answering. Would her face make an expression? Surely her heart would turn towards me with fret and worry. Surely she would speak. But I heard nothing but the turn of Auntie Sarah's old, swollen feet on the floor, heading back to the door. I flew back to my bed, sweaty and eager, waiting for them. Auntie Sarah came with a brown bag from a pharmacist. Auntie Sarah had called my uncle, a doctor, and that evening it was she who went to the pharmacist herself. Mama was in her rooms, and Baba with the other woman in the other house that I had never seen. I imagined it was a perfect copy of our house. His wife, a perfect copy of Mama, a smiling Mama, an unburned Mama, a Mama who talked before the burning house. My cousin seemed to know more about the woman than I did. In school, they talked about her like she was Rihanna, and ambushed me with quizzes like every wrong answer was a confirmation of how little I deserved speaking to. I could never be good at the pretend. Even before the burning house, my interactions with children had been limited, carefully coordinated playdates, children accompanied by the grounding authority of adults. Their evil within bounds, poking at me only when eyes were turned. I had never faced children as a mob, their petty and deeply evil cruelties magnified, tripled. I tried to understand them, to be as they were, as they liked, but I could never get good at it, this particular pretend. I was sheltered immensely, ribbons in my hair, frills on my dresses and on my socks. I'd loved Mama too much for the daring of rebellion. Bright shoes and wedding cake dresses, Something you cannot play with, something that isn't used to playing with others, that doesn't know how, that can't, and that never will. When you hate a thing enough, you want to make it real enough to strike at. When you love a thing enough too. You want to make it flesh, you tear it and eat it. I thought maybe this hurt would make me more realize that it was constructive, perhaps necessary, but it turned me dumb and despondent and sometimes wild. Like an old elephant sapped away by a cattle prod, who once, every 80th strike, goes into rampage and only ends up goring itself. I don't know when the 80th strike would come, but Baba would not tolerate another outburst in school. Every time the principal called me, she'd reach into her drawer and retouch her lipstick, my temples facing the wall, facing nothing and no one, which was the worst thing of all to face. I was sheltered immensely. My mother the subject of much jealousy for how beautiful she'd been, how beautiful she was even now that she'd been disfigured. The poetic tragedy of it, both delicious and bitter to those who'd been hoping for developments of that kind. For she was still lovely in her bearing, a haunting of a woman, a romantic notion. Her husband should have left her. I remember in the Darsa, the story of Sayyidina Yusuf, the knife slipping off the lacquer red flesh of apples and into the meaty palms of every woman who looked up to watch his entry into the room. So beautiful he was a danger to others. So beautiful he was a danger to himself. Jamila, beautiful. Me. They had to water it down to make it less cruel. Made it Mila Mila. Forced fondness to cover up my shortcomings. I should have been as beautiful as both of them combined, my parents. Or at least as beautiful as one or the other. Hamoudi had inherited it. When he'd come back from the hospital, the 40-day visitors had cooed over the raw rat pink of him and pointed out my mother's beautiful eyes, my father's handsome, finely shaped nose, and joked that he was for their daughters. Hamoudi was for the grave. Some earth is eating the rot of him, must have finished eating him by now. In the parlor, as the women had left my mother's room, they'd gossiped as they put on their shoes in front of Kasuku's cage. How can you gossip in front of a parrot? It is like gossiping in front of a child. At least a child can be called a liar. To gossip in front of a parrot in the owner's house was cruel arrogance. Jamila, she's plain, they murmured, as though it was some impolite secret. She looks nothing like her mother. All that beauty skipped over her and landed in the boy. Mama dressed it up in icing, but I was still plain. When Kasuku's cage was still in the parlor, I'd feed him chili pepper after chili pepper, wondering how both our stomachs didn't burst into flaming acid. Oh God, my kingdom for an explosion. I wanted to shatter so that every shard would raise the eyes of everything that had ever looked at me. When Auntie Sarah's words caught me, when she said I was too old, my body turned on me. I took the medicine my mother didn't buy for me. Auntie Sarah did not hate me because she still spoke to me. She took care of me as she'd take care of some unsightly thing that God had made. For there was no evil in me. There is no evil in me. I am something God has made. I am. All night in fever, waiting for Mama to come see me, to speak to me, to tell me I am a thing she also made, not just God on his own, but she didn't. The next morning, the worst fever of my life continued. Days on the couch, a Karate Kid marathon and the STV. Mama used to only want me watching TV on weekends. My eyes haunted the ceiling, waiting for her to come down and put it off, but she didn't. Auntie Sarah drifts in and out of medicine with food. She follows my eyes up and sighs. Karate Kid on TV, all 12 of them, and my eyes hunt the ceiling. When the fever broke, my clothes clung to me, wet and sodden with blood. Auntie Sarah showed surprise for the first time in a long time, and then suspicion, as though I'd performed some trick. She hadn't washed my body since I was a baby, but her hands cooled me in the shower, herding me into the store, the water pinking as she sloshed me, and I closed my eyes in delirium of tears. No one has touched me. Yes, I am certain. Okay. And she sat on the toilet with the lid down. The bathroom was so small. She unwrapped pink plastic, the crinkle of it like old forgotten birthdays. That's how girlhood came at me, a smashed egg, an angry bloody yolk. My mother didn't take a step out of her room.